The Village of Saybrook respectfully acknowledges that we are on the land gathered on is on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, traditional keepers of this land. Call the meeting to order. Introduction of late items. We have two, the Community Works Fund and the 2023 tax rate bylaw number 500. So did everybody catch where those were moved to? Community Works Fund is moved to 11D. And the tax bylaw is moved to 13E. Okay, approval of agenda. Everybody, sorry? Everybody's good with the agenda as amended? Okay, minutes of previous, that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 4th, 2023 be adopted, and the minutes of the special council meeting held April 12th be adopted. Motion, please. Sorry, go ahead.
I think there needs to be a correction among them. So
okay, now's the time. You bet.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe there should be on the April 4th ones, there's where the public person came and presented and asked a question to staff. Where is it gone now? Gotta look at the right thing. Thank you. There it is. I had it marked. Because it says the member of the public asked if staff had researched other communities when they were writing the public nuisance staff report. But I did. That isn't what I heard. The question was whether the staff had researched other communities about medical exemptions, and that the answer was the staff was going to get back to the individual.
I don't recall it being just specifically medical exemptions.
But
Anybody else?
At the very least, I recall that staff was going to get back to the individual. There was no
Yes.
answer given to the question. So I believe the question was about medical exemptions, and staff indicated that they were going to get back to the individual.
Can staff review that tape? Okay, perfect. Thank you. Okay, so the minutes of the regular council meeting held on April 4th, 2023 as amended.
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried, and that the minutes of the special council meeting held on April 12th, 2023 be adopted.
I'll move that.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion's carried. Petition and delegations, we have none. Correspondence. We are looking at pulling A, B. Is there any other requests?
Oscar is one.
We're good with just A and B? Yep. All righty. Okay, so the correspondence from C to E to be received with pulling A and B. Motion, please.
I'll move that.
Second.
I'll second that.
This is the part where we go into the discussion. So we can talk about A is regretfully Aggie can't be here tonight to ask a bunch of questions too. Does anybody have any questions regarding Oscar Days? Councillor Burchett?
Yeah, my question is with request for reduced camping fee, how does that relate to the camping fee last year and how was that calculated and collected?
Give it to staff.
Through the mayor, I don't recall last year what we did. I know that that council did something, but I'd have to go and check. I don't have that information available, unfortunately.
Go ahead, Councillor Polson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that last year we had a big discussion about this and we decided that we would charge the regular fees because and the rationale for that was if they were going to any other campsite, they would be paying the regular fees that that they would be charged at that campsite. And I think we also set it up so that there was not double and tripling of the use of one campsite, that the campsites were rented out as we had them rather than having it jam-packed. That's just my recollection. Thank you.
Yeah, I recall something similar to what Councillor Polson's talking about. So my suggestion is when we go through the rest of these questions, we can bring this back to the next meeting with all the answers. That would make sense to me because this is not an immediate time-sensitive rush. But some of the other questions that I have is who's paying for the porta potties? Is it us or them? And the garbage pickup? The bins, is it us or them? Are they responsible for cleaning up the fields, the campground, and the Kelsey Center after use? Or is it our staff that do that? And of course, the reduced camping fees was a question. And how much, they mentioned that monies goes to our local charities, but we don't know how much or what was done last year in terms of where it went to. So if we're discounting, like for example, if we're giving them the Kelsey Center to use and so on and so forth, and we have to have our staff paid to go do this, what's going back to the community? Councillor Gilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to ask about liquor consumption, because I think I remember there was beer gardens at one point. Are we still doing those or anything? We'll ask that question later. Okay, thank you.
No, there was no beer gardens last year. And from what we understand, there's no request so far this year for beer gardens or a dance. They had a dance last year as well. But the other thing that we have to consider is the amendment to the noise bylaw. From people that have said to me that when it went to 1 o'clock last year, the stereo or the guy that had that set up, it went much later than that. It was 2 or 3 in the morning and so on and so forth. So our bylaw, correct me if I'm wrong, reads till 8 p.m., which is an unreasonable time, I believe, in my opinion. So I would suggest that if we're looking at amendment into our noise bylaw for that evening, I think 11 is fine because time they settle down and the music actually stops. Last time it was 2 to 3 hours after. And there was a lot of residents that, even a couple up in McMillan, what they tried to do is sleep during the day and paint their house at night, overnight because of the noise. So CAO?
Would you like me to ask the organizers what time they hope to have the amendment to the noise bylaw to?
Please see what they're requesting, and then we can bring back that to council at the same time with the answer to the rest of the questions. Councillor Tinsley?
Can I suggest that we drive the bus and not them and tell them that, like, I think 11 is reasonable. I see no reason for it to be later than that. I think we can let them know that that's our expectation, and if they have a problem with it, they can come back to us. But I can't see asking them for what they want. They're gonna want like 1 in the morning or something like that. And I think the figure of 11 is really reasonable in the sense that it'll hopefully calm them down. So by midnight, things really will be quiet. And I think that's only reasonable in a community. In most communities,
Did you want to make a motion on that?
I'll make a motion.
CAO? Sorry.
I'll make a motion for it to be 11, if that's allowed. Thanks.
Yeah, it's allowed. Hang on.
My suggestion was only about compiling all of the questions at the same time and then getting all of the answers and then bringing it back to council. My suggestion wasn't to in any way suggest that 1 o'clock or any other time. I was just going to ask them the question, what time would you be requesting, I think, and then include that with all the other questions at the same time for council's consideration.
Okay. Councillor Bichette?
Yeah, I like the idea of getting back to them with regards to what they feel is a shutdown time. But, you know, I also want to make sure that this is a fun say word instead of a no fun say word, and that we can accommodate both sides. This is a rare event that we would have our noise bylaws changed. And this is a very long-standing tradition of people coming here and enjoying themselves for the weekend. So I'd like to hear what their side has to say first before we make a motion. Thank you.
Councillor Paulson? Do you have anything to add on that? Sorry. In terms of what Councillor Tinsley was talking about, going to 11? No, nothing to add?
No, I don't have any problem about that. I know that there is a bit of noise, but it depends where you live, I guess, because I never even heard it last year, but it was more getting answers, specific answers to the questions. And the reason about the campsite fees was because the village does a lot of work to prepare the field, and it takes a lot of time from the Public Works to get that all mowed and set up and cleaned up, and so when we've got there's no revenue generated from that except for the donations that they're giving to the charities, then I think it's fair that they pay the full camping fees. That's just, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Gilkin, do you have anything to add? We're talking about with the noise bylaw and what Councillor Paulson mentioned.
I agree with both Councillor Tinsley and Councillor Bichette. I'm going to side with Councillor Bichette just because I do want to hear what they have to say in terms of an agreement that we can come to. So that's,
Okay,
yeah, that's.
thank you. So CAO?
Councillor Tinsley made a motion. It wasn't seconded, but just wanted to note that there was a motion made.
Councillor Tinsley?
I'd like to withdraw that motion, thanks.
So staff, you have all the questions that we referred to? Okay. So is that it for A? Okay, so we're going to B, which is Saybird Futures request. Everybody had a chance to read it. Personally, I mean, most municipalities do help out in terms of fireworks and money and so on and so forth for a Canada Day event. So I don't have any issue with the $1,500 for that. Anybody have any comments? Councillor Bichette?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that we should support Saybird Futures and start working on our relationship with them. And I agree with all the assistance that they request in the letter. And I will personally be volunteering with them as well. Thank you.
Anybody else have a comment? Councillor Tinsley?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe this is pretty much in line with what we've done before, and the community does enjoy it. It's a very popular event, both for people who live in the village and people from the valley. So I think it all makes sense to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gilkin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely agree with all this. I'm very excited that this is going to be a Canada Day free of COVID for the first time in 3 years. So I'm very excited. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Paulson?
I agree with all of the requests that they've made, except for the financial, for the fireworks. And I know that there was a grant that could have been applied for and it wasn't applied for last November. So I think that the organizations need to take advantage of every opportunity that they can for grants, because it was that grant that paid for the fireworks every year. And Sayward Futures has never asked for a monetary grant before. So it's just.
Yeah, this doesn't state that the $1,500 is for the fireworks. I was using that as an example. So we need to, CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just wanted to inform council that one additional request from Sayward Futures further to the letter is that they are asking forgiveness with respect to advertising in the Sayward News for the Canada Day event. So the exact amount of advertising isn't known, but we provide a quarter page for free for not-for-profits, and I would think that maybe Canada Day might be a full page. So just for council's knowledge.
So the question is it a municipality event with Sayward Futures kind of thing because it's a Canada Day event? Do you see where I'm going with that? No? If the municipality is participating in the Canada Day event, do we charge them for advertising for Canada Day? Councillor Burchett?
I suggest that, given that it's Canada Day and this is a good start to a working relationship with Sayward Futures and the Village of Sayward, that we grant a full page advertisement at no cost.
Okay. So are we looking at CAO?
I guess just to answer your question specifically, as I understand it, the village isn't being approached to be a partner. So this isn't a Canada Day, for instance, that the way I've read it is going to be Canada Day event presented by Sayward Futures and the Village of Sayward. It's going to be a Canada Day for the community provided by Sayward Future Society, and you're being asked to support it.
Councillor Paulson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to clarify that, the Sayward Futures always did advertise it as their event and that it was free, but they acknowledged all of the corporate sponsors, and the corporate sponsors were can't remember what it's called, but it's where they apply for the grant, and we always had that logo on the advertising, and then listed the like the different companies that supported it with in-kind and also monetary funds. So
Was the Village's logo on there?
yes.
It was. Okay.
Well, it was in the list of
So-
sponsors.
List of sponsors. So that would be a sponsorship thing that we would do by giving them the advertising and whatever is included in here. And we would share in that advertising as the municipality. So I don't disagree with that at all. If we're co-sponsoring, like if we're one of the sponsors for the event. Go ahead, CAO.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I didn't mean to bring, I think the advertising is no different than the rest of the requests. It's a village service, no different than all the services that they're requesting from Public Works, and they're just asking for that to be included in the list.
Okay. So we need a motion, please. Councillor Burchett.
I motion that we accept the letter as written and that we agree with the request for advertising for the Canada Day event.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Thank you. Okay, so that's CFO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just sorry, as a quick follow-up to that, the $1,500 request, that was part of the motion, correct?
Correct.
Do you want staff to bring back information on where the funding source is for that, that donation this year to a future council meeting?
Please.
Thank you.
You all agree?
Yeah.
All righty. Y'all agree. Okay, so we did the recommended resolution on that. Number 7, council reports. None. Reports of committees, none. Mayor's report, none. Unfinished business, none. Staff reports, UBCM. The community forum. That council received the UBCM community forum, the C2C, sorry. Grant staff report for information and discussion. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second? Councillor Paulson,
I'll second that.
discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And that council provide feedback to the staff regarding specific discussion topics to engage one or more First Nations about. Do I have a motion to receive, please?
I'll move that.
Second?
I'll second that.
Discussion. Councillor Paulson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to speak to this because when I saw that we had received the grants in 2 different lump sums, it was really exciting. And after coming back from AVICC this weekend and getting the feeling, it just gives me goose pimples to think how positive and effective the reconciliation and treaty talks were going on. And I really hope that we can reestablish our relationship with Comox and the other First Nations too that we've also identified as we're on part of their land. So I would like to make a motion that we have a COW meeting and
We're still on the first motion.
sorry.
This is
Okay,
just a discussion, so you can
you're
make a
right,
subsequent
you're right.
after. Sorry.
Yes, okay. So I would just like to let you know how positive it was over all of Vancouver Island and the people that were from First Nations that had been elected to their local government and attended this meeting was phenomenal. And the way they spoke was just incredible, especially on Sunday. It was a very moving day. So I think that we've got to get back on the bus.
Okay, further discussion? Director, you want to be a director now? Councillor Gilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just have somebody, like, I've read through it obviously, but can somebody kind of break it down in terms of what exactly it is? Just because I'm new and I'm sure it might be good for Councillor Burchett to just kind of like a breakdown, if that makes sense. Thank you.
In terms of what C2C is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so Councillor Gilkin, UBCM has supported municipalities and First Nations efforts to come together over, for many, many years now. At first, when C2C was created, it really was for them to come together and meet and to engage, have conversations with one another. I guess the program has matured over time, and what UBC or what the program really looks to now is for local governments and First Nations to get together and actually start to discuss service agreements that they can form together. A lot of communities will form water use agreements, sewage usage agreements, any type of emergency management agreements. And so those are the type of conclusions or outcomes that will come from C2C, community to community meetings. And Sayward's had success with having those meetings in the past. I just didn't have the information, the knowledge of how this council would like to proceed. So I thought it would be good to get together, have some discussions, and then make the application.
C2C first. The first thing that has to happen in a C2C is to establish relationship. Mistake is to go in and, as we've done in the past, we made a mistake of going in and having an ask without establishing that relationship first. But as Councillor Paulson pointed out, it's not just Comox, it's We Kai, We Come as well.
Yeah.
Is something we could look at. Now they're giving 10,000 where it used to be 5, and 10,000 extra if you're going into anything regarding bylaws or changes in OCP and that type of thing.
Thank you.
So more discussion, Councillor Burchett.
Yeah, further to this discussion, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this 100%, and after coming back from the AVICC, it was very moving on where we're going with this and where we could go in the future. And looking at the past attendance and the one that was held in, I believe, was 2021, I would, and the expenditure for that, I think that we could really do a lot more engagement and have a lot more participation from all the First Nations. And I fully support this, and yeah, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Councillor Tinsley?
Is this a point where we're going to discuss potential topics and the specific nations involved, or is this just about?
I think that's the direction that CAO is looking for.
Okay, so if we're going to move on to specific recommendations, I think the CAO had an excellent couple of points, but I would suggest the first thing would be or the key would be to ask them what they see as their priorities relative to us, and then we can work from there. Whether it be some of the things the CAO cited, emergency shared agreements, other things, and that would be the starting point. See where their priorities are, and then we discuss there. That would be my suggestion. Thanks.
As I mentioned, one thing we do need to establish first is a relationship. Comox is a completely new council. There's nobody that was on there before. So, and the way, from what I understand it, from speaking to the Indigenous liaison person at the SRD, it's about establishing that relationship first and then going in. So the C2C, the first one, I would expect it to be, having that shared meal together and getting that relationship built without going in for an ask, and discussing some of those things that you're mentioning, Councillor Tinsley, at that C2C. What's important to you as your First Nation? What would you like to see from us? And that type of takeaway, but not for us to go in with a specific ask, because that's not how it's. Councillor Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I agree with you 100% that the engagement should be just getting people to come and break bread with us, and there should be no ask other than come join us and have a meal, and the engagement should be done at a later time or in the next phase, but the initial C2C engagement should be see how many people and First Nations we can get to the table. Thank you.
Councillor Tinsley.
So to move on from that aspect, I believe we need to agree on the nations involved, and then the question related to that would be, and obviously I think it's pretty clear, unless we're missing someone, we're talking Comox, Weewakee, Weewakam, and then the other aspect to that would be, how does that work? Do we meet with them individually? Do we meet with them all together? Do they want to meet all together? Those are the questions I would suggest we address.
Yeah, how it starts off is staff to staff, right? They have that conversation and we say, we'd like to get together, break bread with both councils together. Is that something that you're in? No, you do want to, We Kai and We Come can be done together. But Comox is a separate, we don't want to do all three at the same time. That's separate nations on there. But we ask them, we say to We Kai, do you want We Come to be involved in this at the same time? Because they're very closely together. but they still have two different councils? Or do we do it, three of them individually? So that'd be a question that we need to ask Wee Wee Kai and Wee Wee Kum on how they see that next step. Comox is separate. So we would have staff to staff, have that relationship and ask them, you know, what would you like? And then it would be brought to council. Sound good? Councillor Tinsley?
So that's great. And so we all agree that those are the only three. We're not missing anyone.
As far as I know, that's the only three. Yeah. CAO?
Yeah, the one element that I would also inform council about is the program can also pay for a facilitator. So for somebody to attend those engagements, once it ends up being chief and council, and you can have a facilitator that can bring both groups through what's already been decided upon, a mutually agreeable agenda. But a facilitator can be helpful, sort of break some of the silence sometimes. So,
okay. Okay, so all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Follow up on backyard chickens. The council received the follow-up backyard chicken staff report for information and discussion. Do you have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion? All in favor? No discussions on the second part. That's just to receive. Opposed? Seeing none, carried. And the council provide direction to staff on next steps. Do I have a motion on that, please?
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. Councillor Gilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is such a big topic and such a big group of things that we need to be, or well, that staff needs to look at and we all need to consider. I think it's a great idea, obviously, but with what's in the report, and what we need to be looking at, and I read through all the things, all the shelter, where we're gonna dump the leftover chicken scratch, the size of the huts and all that. I think this is a very large topic. I totally agree, but it's just a very, it needs some good discussion. That's what I'm gonna say. Thank you.
Right, anybody else? Councillor Burchett?
Yeah, I 100% agree that we should have backyard chickens. I brought my chicken mug to support this year, so the people of Say would know what I'm standing for. But this is also about food security, and it's also about not saying no to what people can and can't do in their backyards, and maybe keeping some government control out of what they do on their property. A contentious issue sometimes is the rats with regards to chickens and the attractants. Well, the number one food source for rats is actually dog feces. So if we're going to ban chickens, should we ban dogs because it's a rat attractant? Further to that too, just driving from the village here up to the co-op on garbage day, there's probably about 10 different garbage cans knocked over with animals getting in it. So the attractants are already here for rats and birds as such, and bears. So a responsible chicken owner, which I've been in the past, can have some very low cost nutrition available in their backyard. It's a great learning experience for kids as well. Not to mention that chickens get rid of ticks and spiders and some other unwanted pests. But I also agree that there should be some licensing involved or some bylaw enforcement if we decide to have backyard chickens. And one of the ideas I'd like to put forward is maybe a $20 license fee for chickens that would supplement the cost of a bylaw officer, maybe doing a yearly inspection of a chicken run to make sure that they're in accordance with standards that have worked in places like Saanich in Victoria or other municipalities that have backyard chickens. So again, I'm 100% for backyard chickens, and I look forward to more discussion.
Anybody else? Councillor Tinsley?
I also support food security and this concept here. I'm going to suggest that staff, or that we recommend as a next step, which is what they're asking for, is that the staff, based on the information in the report, and there's that staff look to what they believe is the best practices in the different areas of controls and put together a draft that we can look at relative to addressing some of the current concerns we've talked about. Then we can move to the next step, which is assessing whether that's too complicated, not complicated enough, any fees that were involved, that type of thing. Sort of step-by-step process, because as Councillor Gilkin mentioned, it's a big animal, a chicken animal, to bite off, and we need to do it in steps. So that's my thoughts. Thanks.
Councillor Paulson, do you have anything to add?
I agree with both Councillor Tinsley and Councillor Burchett that we're all for food security, but I'm wondering if there's a restriction on the number of chickens that a person can have in their yard. That is this a realistic food security program? Because if chickens only lay part of the year and shut down in the wintertime, then is it really food security? I agree with the ideas that it's beneficial for kids, and but I do think we need to have a very strict code to follow, because I can see it going sideways really quickly if people get chickens and then they start running loose. And how are you going to identify them except by their tag that they've had to buy to be licensed? And it's going, I just don't want it to turn out like kids getting bunnies for Easter, and then 2 days later it's they're ending up at the SPCA or turned loose and left to. So that's, I think we, like Councillor Tinsley said, we really need to look at this in depth. It's not just, oh yeah, everybody can have 3 chickens. It has to have regulations and tight regulations. So.
Councillor Gilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely agree with Councillor Burchett and Councillor Tinsley. I think this is great, but like I said before, it's a very big step-by-step project. So I think it's much consideration, but I fully support.
Some of the concerns that I have, it's the cost of enforcement, where we don't really have a bylaw officer. I don't know if annually, especially when new, would be enough in terms of checking on the properties, and it's still that cost involved in that. They also mentioned in the reports that it's important to have a veterinarian close by, because if you get a diseased chicken or a sick chicken or whatever else. So we don't have any vet care here. I don't know if it's different from when your dog gets sick and you take it into Campbell. Apparently it's a special type of vet that handles chickens. I don't have any experience with chickens other than the end result. So but the cost is what's a big concern, and policing it is my big concern. I know that they allow it in Campbell River, and I know there's been lots of issues with it in terms of you never want to penalize the responsible people, because it's the responsible people don't do anything wrong, but there are people that are irresponsible, and the smell coming over into the neighbors and so on and so forth is a concern of mine. So, Councillor Gilkin, or pardon me, Burchett.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Having owned chickens before, I've never had an issue with having to take a chicken to the vet. And that's having chickens for a period of 5 years, although they do pass away and some age out as well. And I agree with Councillor Paulson that there should be some measures in place, whether it's 4 chickens or 6, whatever that number would be. And that could also be dependent on the size of the chicken run as well. And of course, I am 100% against roosters.
Yes.
So I'll just add that to the foray, because they can be pretty noisy and whatnot. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so a bylaw officer, I mean, apparently in one of the reports, it says when they're babies or chicks, it's very difficult to tell the difference between a chicken and a rooster until it's too late. So I don't know what you would do in that case. You go to their house and see their rooster. I don't know what would be done, but so that's all the things that you need to look at. Do you need any more debate on that issue before you bring back a report like Councillor Tinsley is suggesting?
For clarification, I didn't hear the request, but I'm sensing that you're looking to staff to create a bylaw.
Councillor Tinsley?
So my suggestion was yes, that we would ask staff to look at the information here, make a middle of the road kind of process of addressing some of the things that have been addressed already, bring it forward, then we're going to look at it again and have this discussion again around some of these concerns. And is that addressed? Is it not? Including the financial part and the ability to enforce. And I think that first step will help us refine it a little bit. And then at that point, it's still a matter of step by step, and sometimes steps stop, and who knows, we may have to look at it and say there's so much involved that it's going to be hard for us, or we can't do it. But we need to take the first step. We need to move forward, right?
Yeah, as you said, costs and everything else involved. Good. Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, on the receive and discuss, or no, that was providing direction to staff. And that, so all in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, carried. Public nuisance bylaw. The council received the public nuisance bylaw staff report for information and discussion. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Thank you. Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. All in favor of receipt? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And the council directs staff to prepare a draft public nuisance bylaw for the May 2nd, 2023 council meeting. Motion, please.
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. I'm still in favor of 2. Councillor Tinsley?
I believe, we've all gathered the additional information, which that there is no issue with any medical devices not requiring any kind of generator. There's battery backup for everything. Everyone's recognizing that. So I think in terms of, somewhat related to what we just discussed, the inability to enforce complicated bylaws and the testing and whatnot, I really believe that there's no need for any exemptions for anything, because that's been proven in the facts of the technology. And the simplest thing, and something that the village can enforce, is to stick with the current bylaw, which is that generators shouldn't be run between, I believe it's 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., or we could bump it a little later. But I think that's the most reasonable, enforceable type situation. And given the technology, that's perfectly doable. There's no reason for any exemptions, anything like that. That's my discussion points on it, and I hope we'll consider that. Anyway, that's my position. Thanks.
Anybody else? Councillor Burchett?
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Mayor and Councillor Tinsley. Option 2 seems to be the best, but one thing that was neglected in the discussion last time is one way to really easily mitigate generator noise is a very cheap pair of earplugs. And, that should be mentioned. And you can get some nice noise canceling headphones that are relatively cheap as well, which then again, we don't have to look at all the mitigating things of mufflering and where to position generators. And, and that's my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Paulson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree that that generators should be exempt from the bylaw, and that the cases should be dealt with on an individual basis because there are several ways to get away from the generator noise, moving to a different location, using earplugs, not a different, like a different location in your house, using earplugs. I still believe that the use of generators is done on an emergency basis, and that we should not rule out the use of generators during a storm for the noise bylaw. I think that it's not only medical reasons that people need to run the generator, but if they don't have an alternate heat source, it's to keep the old people and the children and everybody warm. It usually happens in the winter time when we have extended ones. So I just can't see that it's necessary to basically outlaw generator use from 8 at night till 7 in the morning.
Thank you. Next. Councillor Gilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with everybody around the table. Option 2 seems to be the most reasonable, and I think that that's a step forward for everybody, and I believe what Councillor Polson just stated is very, very important, so I'm standing with option 2. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Tinsley.
So my position is actually option 4, which is the simplest one. And it's based on, and I just want to be clear, there is no medical equipment all around the world is capable of running during power outages. It doesn't, and batteries can be recharged from, what are we talking, 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. every day. So it's just about making it really simple and ability to enforce. And I think we need to deal with the facts on what's here. We all live in homes. For someone not to be able to be in their home without heat for, what are we talking here? Even if we bumped it to 10 at night, we're talking 8 hours. Again, I'm trying to make this simple and something that we can address as a community, so that if there is a complaint, the first step would be just a simple letter. You know, someone has let us know that you were running your generator. This is the hours you can't run your generator. And then hopefully the person cooperates. And then the next step is a warning notice about the fact that there's fines in place. And then the third step is, and it goes down the road, but most people are reasonable. I see it as perfectly reasonable. If you go to a campground anywhere in British Columbia, there are certain hours you can run your generator. And I guarantee they're not between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. It's just the reality. And technology solves all of this. We have a small community. We can't enforce anything other than that. And I think that's the most logical step, and everyone can accommodate it. That's my thoughts. Thank you. That's number 4. I just want to be clear. Thanks.
Scott was Councillor Burchett.
One thing I'd like to add to the discussion is due to climate change and also due to Saywood having floods quite often, some people have sump pumps in their basement, and to not have your generator going and not have your sump pump is a very negative consequence. So we have to factor that into however we make this decision, that, you know, if adverse weather, power goes out, flooding, well, if you have a generator, you probably want to have your sump pump working. And that's my point on that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Councillor Gilkin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I absolutely agree with what Councillor Tinsley is saying on the enforcement part. The thing that I'm looking at is the cost of the battery packs. I believe that was brought up in other discussions at recent council meetings. Realistically, we don't have power outages that last, well, we've had one in 2018 or 19 that lasted for a week. Knock on wood, it doesn't happen again, or for a while, but it's 2 days, 3 days. And I mean, to go buy a battery pack for $600 realistically, it just seems unreasonable when we could just put forth a bylaw like this. It just, to me, I see this as a more simple additive than not giving that option. Then people have to go out and buy the battery packs, and then they get fined if they're not cooperating because they didn't want to go spend the $600 to buy a battery pack and they have to run the generator, right? That's just my kind of take on it. Thank you.
What Councillor Polson said in terms of some elderly being cold depending on what the temperature is outside, but also babies. You know, you brought up a good point last council meeting when we were discussing this. People that have automatic relay systems, and it goes automatically when the power goes out, their system engages. And they're away on holidays. Does it need to engage for that amount of time, save the power's out for 5 days? What would be, you were talking about the technology to say certain times it can go on and off, which I agree. I don't think it should run 24/7 at that point for somebody with an automatic relay if they're gone. But it should be able to run at certain times, because otherwise when they're gone, they will lose their fridge content. They could have people staying there looking after their place. Animals, a caged animal will die when it's cold. I know that happened to my baby tarantula, and that was very disturbing. But there's other things that are considered not just medical. Councillor Tinsley?
I fully agree with everything. I just, like, you can run your generator, I'll say it again, from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. to recharge batteries, to heat your home. It's very simple. The concept of even some pumps run on battery backup. Like, we live in a world where new cars can't be run without having a battery recharge. So it's the whole new world, and it's the simplest world. I just don't see, you know, I'm going to vote for option 4, and if the vote is for the other option, then I'm just going to whatever, right? You know, that's the way it works. But I keep making this point. We're in a world that you can control things. We have insulated houses. We have battery power backup for everything. The stats are that all the things available to run it, to not need to have a generator running we're talking 8 hours out of a 24-hour period, is there. So I'm trying to understand why we would want to change that.
Okay.
And I would question, because I know we didn't answer the person who came in the public. I don't believe there's any community that creates exemptions. We don't have time for exemptions. The simplest thing is that's the hours they go off. Half of them can't run for too long unless they're these in-house ones with huge tanks, can't run for 24 hours at a time. You'd be running them back and forth to the gas station, if you can get to the gas station. So I'm just trying to understand why we're going down a road it defies logic to me.
Okay.
Thank you.
CAO?
Whoops.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for council's awareness, one of the reasons why, or one of the considerations that was given to creating the options, and in fact, the recommendation strongly relates to staff's capacity or the village's capacity, in the sense that we have a very small office. Bylaw enforcement is difficult for a small office like ours. We don't have a full-time bylaw enforcement officer. Creating, I think, as I heard somebody said, I don't recall who, so I apologize, but for somebody, anytime you create a rule that needs policing, you need to provide the police. And we can't just rely on a resident to phone in and say, the next day, somebody's generator was operating last night. I'd like to have a letter sent to them. We would need to have somebody call into a system, have a bylaw enforcement person available to attend to somebody's house at 11 o'clock at night, at 3 o'clock in the morning, to verify what is occurring. And those are the costs, those are the staff resources and the costs that were considered as being beyond our capacity financially and staffing wise. And that partly contributed to the recommendations that you're seeing. So just for council's information there, it's not that we don't support one or couldn't see one being viable. It's just that this is, we think about what we have the capacity for and what's best suited for the village.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Paulson is next, then Councillor Bichette.
I think if we go back to where this request originated from, it was for a person to be guaranteed a perfect night's sleep with decibels below 45 or whatever it was. So that's like complete silence. And as a municipality and as sitting on this council, we cannot guarantee that to anyone. It's, like I said before, it's very troubling when the power goes off and there's wind and rain and trees blowing over and noises that keep most people awake and worry about what's happening in the night or during the day. And so I just, I can't justify voting to have everybody that has a generator not run them between nighttime hours so that there can be perfect silence, because there's never perfect silence. I mean, the birds wake me up chirping in the morning, so, and I can't control that. So I would prefer to leave the noise bylaw as it is with there's many people who have invested in generators in this community. And I think it's important that in an emergency, they are able to run them. That's just my comment.
Okay, so why don't we bring to a vote, or we need somebody to put a motion on the floor for option 1, 2, 3, or 4, please. Councillor Tinsley.
I move for option 4. I move for option 4. It's the simplest option.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second? No second. Sorry. So the motion's defeated. We need another motion on 1, 2, or 3, please. Councillor Bichette.
I'll motion option 2.
Okay, second.
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion. All in favor? Opposed option 2? Okay, 3-2, it is passed. Okay, late item 11D. Community funds, pardon me, work fund. No discussion, so staff recommendation. Did everybody get a chance to read it? It was sent earlier. The council receives the community work fund transfer for 2022 report for information and discussion. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. And that council approves a transfer from the community funds work reserve to the amount of $141,690 for the Newcastle Dam decommissioning project. Do I have a motion, please?
Oh, my mistake. I move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, emergency services, none. Bylaws. The council procedure amendment bylaw 496, 2023, been giving fourth and final reading. Do you have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
You, second?
I'll second that.
Okay, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? That's 4-1. Motion is carried. Reserve Fund Establishment Amendment Bylaw 497, 2023, be given first, second, and third reading. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Thank you. Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. 5-year financial plan, bylaw number 498, 2023, be given first, second, and third reading. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. Fees and charges. Amendment bylaw 499, 2023, be given first, second, and third reading. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion. Councillor Paulson?
I've got my light on already. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to discuss or to look at on page 64, where it lists community/family announcements, memorials, thank you, and nonprofit organizations. I thought we had reviewed this policy while the previous CAO was here, and we had set out a fee schedule for nonprofit organizations and also for the announcements for memorials and thank yous. No, we didn't? Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Burchett?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just probably a staff clarification on page 65. I had a quick question about the campground service fee schedule. If they only operate for 6 months, are they paying for 6 months? It says here divided by 12 times.
CFO?
Thank you through the mayor to Councillor Burchett. So it's actually serviced stalls times months in operation divided by 12 and then times the motel rate. So it's just, you might be reading it a little bit different. So the motel rate is up above the 224.30. So you do the calculation first of service stalls times months in operation divided by 12, and then whatever that number is, you times it by the motel rate. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification.
Anybody else? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, it's carried. Okay, that was the fees and charges, right? Okay, E, bylaw tax rate, bylaw number 500. That the tax rate bylaw 500, 2023 be given first, second, and third reading. Do I have a motion, please?
I'll move that.
Second?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Seeing none, motion is carried. New business, none. Public question period. Do we have anybody online? No. So the purpose of the question period is to enable citizens to ask questions of council about issues that are important to the citizen asking the question. Speakers are asked to limit their questions to one each, and if time permits, after everyone has had the opportunity to ask questions, speakers may ask a second question. Citizens will be asked to state their name and address. And we have nobody. Okay. In camera, none. And adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move that.
Second,
I'll second that.
discussion? All in favor? Bedtime. Okay. Motion's adjourned. Motion's adjourned. The motion is adjourned with the meeting. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
You are our official Home Village public representatives.